There's a way to win that leaves your opponent swinging at shadows, because by the time they move, the battle is already over, and today you'll discover exactly how to get there. Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated swordsman, author of the Book of Five Rings, hinted at a strategy more dangerous than steel: move the opponent's spirit before the blade ever appears. It blends timing, distance, deception, and emptiness. What he called the void. Modern science would call it state control, attentional framing, and predictive advantage. The catch: you must give up the ego that needs to be seen winning. Pride wants a duel. Power wants the outcome. If you're serious about learning to shape outcomes instead of chase arguments, subscribe and comment the one arena where you waste the most energy fighting. Let's begin. Raphael wakes with the taste of metal in his mouth. It's not blood. It's the leftover tang of adrenaline from last night's argument. Another clarification thread that spiraled into a duel. He scrolls through the notifications. A message where he just had to correct a colleague's phrasing. A comment he left on a public thread that now has 10 replies. A calendar invite titled Alignment that everyone knows means ambush. The pattern is always the same. Someone pushes. He pushes back. For a few seconds he feels clean, bright, sharp, the intoxicating snap of being right, followed by hours of static in his head. Work slips, sleep fractures, relationships calcify. He's collecting tiny trophies of correctness while losing the war of his life. He watches himself do it. In the morning stand-up, someone suggests their team is late because of Raphael's dependency. Before he can breathe, the words fly out. That's not accurate. Heads turn. Now he has to make them agree, slide by slide. The moment becomes an arena, not a room. He wins the exchange. He marshals proof. The other side concedes, yet the project still slows, and the room leaves with a sour aftertaste. In the afternoon, he answers a Slack ping with a definitive paragraph that pins the issue to another department. It's perfect, airtight, and makes a future collaborator feel small. That night, his partner asks for help with a minor task. Tired and frayed, he launches into a micro-lecture about bandwidth. 5 minutes later, he's alone in the kitchen, staring at his reflection in the kettle. A man who keeps defending himself until there's nothing left to defend. He knows the neuroscience word for it. Amygdala hijack. The body registers threat, the prefrontal cortex goes dim, the tongue grabs the sword. But labels don't change outcomes. What he is practicing, without meaning to, is reactivity. He's conditioning himself to step into every invitation, to elevate every bump into a battle. Over time, this drains him in ways that sleep cannot repair. Micro-tensions in the jaw, shoulders that never fully drop, breathing that never quite reaches the bottom of his lungs. He sees the cost in numbers, missed deadlines, in faces, colleagues who stop sharing early drafts, in quiet moments, a creeping sense that he is always on the back foot, explaining, defending, chasing. On a Tuesday that already feels like a Friday, he falls into a used bookstore on his walk home and pulls a thin volume because the cover is black and severe. The Book of Five Rings. The name rings a bell from a podcast or a thread. He opens to a random page and reads a line that feels like a blade laid flat across his forearm. You must make your enemy act according to your tempo. He flips again. Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. One more. Do nothing which is of no use. He stands in the aisle for 20 minutes, barely moving. The words aren't poetic, they're clinical, almost cold. But under them is a warmth he hasn't felt in a long time. The relief that comes when someone explains the shape of a problem so clearly the problem loses half its power. He takes the book home and reads at the desk he normally uses for rebuttals. He notices something obvious and devastating. Musashi didn't win because he was the strongest man in every room. He won because he controlled the room. His victories often happened before the blades touched, by choice of terrain, timing, and expectation. In modern language, attentional framing, predictive processing, state control, the opponent swung at where they thought he was. By the time their attention caught up, the outcome was already decided. Raphael underlines a line and writes in the margin, "Move their spirit before you move your hand." He feels the catch prick his pride. To play this way, you have to release the pleasure of being visibly right. You have to let your public image take small bruises while the outcome quietly moves in your favor. Pride wants applause. Strategy wants leverage. The duel is dramatic. The design is invisible. He closes the book and stares at his phone, finger hovering over an open thread full of invitations to fight. He deletes the draft reply and physically feels the withdrawal, the tiny dopamine dip of not defending himself. He breathes. His chest loosens one notch. He writes on a sticky note and sticks it to his monitor. Not the argument, the frame. The next morning, he tests the idea in the smallest possible way. The stand-up begins like a traffic jam, with overlapping agendas and defensive tones. His name is about to be pulled into the center. Instead of jumping in, he counts 3 breaths. Slow inhale, longer exhale. This isn't spirituality, it's mechanics. Long exhales tell his vagus nerve to lower the alarm. He scans the scene for tempo, the rhythm of the room, and for distance, the gap between where he is and where decisions are made. A colleague pins a delay on his team. Old reflex. That's not accurate. New move, a single question, asked evenly, replacing the duel with a frame. Before we allocate blame, what's the one Friday metric that makes this whole conversation unnecessary? The room stalls, like a car shifted into a different gear. Someone answers. Suddenly they're discussing the metric, not his reputation. The accusation dissolves because it has nowhere to anchor. The conversation ends faster than usual, and 2 people message him later saying, "Nice reframe." Progress is small, but pride is loud. As he closes his laptop, a second wave hits. They still think you were at fault. You should post the charts. He feels himself reaching for the old drug, the satisfying click of proving a point. He hears Musashi in his head, or maybe it's his own new voice. Do nothing which is of no use. He doesn't post the charts. The discomfort lingers like a phantom itch. He writes in his notebook, "Every time I don't reach for the little trophy, I add weight to the real win." He experiments again at noon. An email arrives with passive-aggressive wording. Per our understanding, Raphael's team has not provided X. This is the kind of sentence that can ruin an afternoon. He drafts 3 versions of a perfect correction, all of which are vents dressed as clarity. He deletes them. Instead, he sends 8 words. Happy to provide X by Friday's metric. Confirm? He feels ridiculous, under-armored, exposed, like he's letting them off the hook. But within 10 minutes, the thread cools. People move. The work advances. He swallows the urge to add, "for the record," and notices something interesting. His shoulders don't climb towards his ears for the rest of the day. The nervous system records a small victory. When the body doesn't brace for a duel, energy returns to building. At home, the test is harder because the stakes are closer to the bone. His partner mentions the sink. He can hear the landmine under the sentence. It's not about dishes, it's about attention. He senses the old reflex. Explain, justify, leverage hours worked as moral currency. He tries the invisible approach. I didn't see it. What would make tonight feel lighter? A pause. The air softens. They decide together in 30 seconds what would have taken 30 minutes to litigate. Later, he sits on the couch feeling unheroic and strangely content. Not dramatic, effective. Relief is not mastery. The old loop is deeply grooved, and the next day, he relapses. In a public channel, someone posts a neat diagram that blames his component for a system bug. The post gets emojis. Raphael feels heat crawl up his neck. He pastes in 3 screenshots and a surgical teardown. The room goes quiet. He wins. He also feels like he's eaten a bag of stale candy, wired, a little sick, unsatisfied. That night, he reads one page of 5 Rings again and writes in big letters, "I don't need to be seen winning to win." He underlines it twice. Because willpower is a bad operating system, he builds a system that can run without constantly gritting his teeth. He turns Musashi's abstractions into daily reps. First, he practices what he calls empty stance each time he crosses a threshold. A doorway, a calendar alert, a ringtone. 3 breaths, jaw unclenched, eyes soft. The point isn't calm, it's clarity. Emptiness here means no story. He doesn't arrive already armed with his narrative. In physiological terms, the brief pause lets executive function come online so he can choose a move rather than be played by reflex. He pairs the breath with a tiny physical reminder. Fingertips pressed together once. The anchor is silly enough to be memorable and small enough to hide. Second, he trains his eye for distance. In swordsmanship, it's mai, the living gap between fighters that decides which techniques are even possible. In knowledge work, distance is who actually decides, at what altitude and in what time frame. He routinely finds himself fighting at the wrong distance, debating details when the decision will be made by someone 3 levels up on one criterion only, risk to a Friday metric. So he starts asking 3 internal questions before speaking. Where is the real decision? Who's the decider? What is the one metric that collapses debate? Sometimes the answer is awkward. The real decision isn't in this room. It's in a one-on-one with finance tomorrow. Instead of dueling now, he moves the conversation to that altitude. Let's propose 2 options to finance with wristbands attached. I'll draft. Other times, the distance problem is time. People are arguing about abstractions because the deadline is fuzzy. He shrinks the distance. By end of day, can we pick one experiment to falsify assumption A? When he gets the distance right, half of the conflicts evaporate like mist. Third, he learns to play with kyojitsu, false and true. This isn't lying. It's offering an opening that draws the other side into the terrain where the best decision becomes obvious. He practices harmless giveaways that lower guard and pull attention. I might be missing something. If we optimize for Friday's metric instead of full fidelity, what breaks? Or, let's assume I'm wrong for a second. Under that assumption, which path risks the least? Often, people step through the opening to argue against him, and in doing so, they illuminate the exact constraint he needed to reveal. This is new and delicate territory. Used cynically, it becomes manipulation. Used well, it saves everyone time. His rule, if the move doesn't reduce suffering for the group, it's off the table. Fourth, he rehearses sen no sen, seizing initiative before the clash. In meetings, this means sending the agenda first, framing the question before the loudest voice frames it for him. He notices how often decisions are made by whoever defines the terms earliest. He begins each meeting with one sentence that cuts to constraint. We have 25 minutes and 1 Friday metric. Let's choose the smallest move that gets us 80% of the way. When threads start online, he posts a draft proposal before debate fossilizes around a misconception. He volunteers to ask the first question in external calls, not to posture, but to set tempo. Slow, concrete, metric-bound. In fights outside of work, initiative means going first with honesty. I'm tempted to argue, what I really want is X. Would Y work? It disarms the scripted collision. Finally, he studies the void. The word feels mystical, but its application is brutal and freeing. Do not bind yourself to one stance, one identity, one way of being effective. It is the opposite of the masquerade he's been wearing for years. The expert, the rescuer, the closer. Some days, the most strategic move is to be the listener who says nothing and leaves space large enough for the truth to walk in on its own. Other days, it's the scout who brings back one crisp risk, saving the team a week. Occasionally, it's the ghost. Decline the meeting, write the 2-line doc, and let the system self-correct. The void is not detachment, it's availability. He repeats to himself, I am not my favorite move. On days he forgets and clings to being the smartest person in the room, he notices how readable he becomes and how easily he can be baited. When he lets go, he becomes harder to catch because there's nothing fixed to grab. Because systems collapse without feedback, he installs a scoreboard that has nothing to do with applause. Each night, he writes 3 lines. One moment he avoided a useless duel, one moment he set the field, and one sentence he wishes he had swallowed. He also tracks what the body knows before the mind does: jaw tension, breath depth, whether he finds himself crafting public defenses in the shower. He treats failures like weather reports, not confessions. He runs tiny experiments, pre-write the opening sentence for tomorrow's risky call, remove Slack from his phone for 2 hours each morning, move a weekly status meeting from public theatre to a small triad with the actual decider. Most importantly, he decides in advance where he will not fight: public threads, late-night texts, meetings without a decider. If someone insists on pulling him into a performance, he offers a calm alternative. Happy to decide this in a 10-minute call with the owner. Propose a time. If they refuse, that's the decision. Nothing to do. In the 3rd week, he notices a structural shift. People start coming to him earlier when ideas are soft and easier to shape. Opponents still test him, but their jabs no longer find the old flinch. He's not less assertive, he's more precise. He speaks less, moves more. He's learning the difference between momentum and noise. When he messes up, and he still does, he messes up smaller, recovers faster, and doesn't burn the field while proving a point. He starts to sense the thing Musashi meant by perceiving what you can't see. The undercurrent of a room, the way one sentence can tilt a decision, the truth that most battles are invitations you can decline without losing a thing that matters. And because he's human, he keeps one indulgence. After a day where he neither bragged nor brawled, he pours tea and opens 5 rings to the last section. The void is where nothing exists. It is not included in man's knowledge. The words don't make him mystical, they make him generous. He doesn't need to win out loud. He just needs the work to move and the people to leave lighter than they arrived. The next morning, he tapes a new note beside the first. Control the tempo. Choose the distance. Offer the opening. Set the terms. Be no one in particular. Then he closes his laptop for one quiet breath longer than feels comfortable, steps into the day, and lets the room swing at shadows. The calendar invite has the bland title that hides a blade. Alignment. He recognizes the names. The rival who smiles with his teeth, 2 stakeholders who like theatre, and the director who rarely speaks until the end. He arrives 10 minutes early and walks the room like he's checking exits, because he is. He slides the chairs slightly so the screen isn't the center, moves the projector remote near his seat, and writes one sentence on the whiteboard in small, neat letters. Friday success metric. Deploy Module B with less than 2% error. Then he sits with his hands resting, breath slow enough that his pulse unhooks from his throat. 3 long exhales. Empty stance. No story. No stance to defend. When the rival enters with a laptop heavy with slides, the energy spikes as expected. Without hurry, Raphael speaks first, not loudly, but like someone who already believes the meeting is decided. Before updates, can we confirm the success metric for Friday? If we align that, the rest becomes logistics. The sentence is a net. Heads tilt toward it. The director nods because it costs nothing to agree on a metric. Costless agreement is the doorway. Once inside, you can place walls. The laptop opens, the ambush begins, neatly colored timelines converging on a red box around Raphael's team. As you can see, the critical path is blocked. The words are designed to force him into a duel slide by slide. He feels the old urge, screenshot, rebut, corner, but he watches the tempo instead. He doesn't interrupt. He lets the opponent step fully into the stance of "I am diagnosing you," then offers a harmless opening that bends the arc of the room. "You're right to flag risk on Module B," he says, looking at the director, not the rival. If we redirect my bandwidth from C to B for 48 hours, we'll hit the metric with room to spare. I'll freeze C until Monday if we align on that. Can I get your sign-off? It sounds like concession. It's kyojitsu, the false opening that invites the other to agree to what you wanted all along. The rival nods because he wants to be right about the risk. The stakeholders nod because the sentence feels like accountability. The director nods because a clear, time-bound decision reduces harm. Raphael writes the decision on the whiteboard under the metric. Small, plain, undeniable. Freeze C, reassign to B, Friday. A subtle shift spreads across the table. The duel dissolves into a plan. Slides keep trying to claw back relevance, but the decision has already folded around them like water around a stone. He secures the distance next. To make this real, I'll send a 2-sentence summary with owners and times, he says, already typing the names. If anyone objects, reply all in the next 10 minutes. The rival glances at his laptop, probably realizing the trap. Once the summary lands, the decision hardens into institutional memory. Tempo belongs to the person who writes the first artifact. Raphael hits send. The email appears on their phones with a subject line that reads like a gavel. Friday metric plan, B focus, C freeze. Approved. The rival pivots to just some clarifying questions, but every question now orbits the plan he framed. When someone tries to drag the conversation into a forensic blame dig, he returns to the metric like a shepherd. Dog returns sheep to path. Useful for the post-mortem. Does it change Friday? Silence. Next item. Leaving the room, he feels strange, alert, and, for the first time in weeks, not wired. The body recognizes the difference between winning and wrestling. Back at his desk, he sends a second note to finance and the director. 2 options with risk bands, 1 sentence each. High altitude, real deciders, no performative detail. Option A, 48-hour focus on B, Friday metric met, C slips to Monday. Option B, maintain C, 40% risk to Friday metric, reputational impact on client demo. He doesn't argue. He makes them choose the distance where argument becomes silly. Finance replies in 4 minutes. Go with A. He pins the response. The battlefield is now a corridor. Of course there's blowback. In a side channel, someone writes, "Feels like we're letting Raphael off the hook," and the rival sprinkles emojis like breadcrumbs for outrage. Raphael types nothing. He walks to the kitchen, fills water, breathes the itch out of his fingers, and returns to work. Pride is loud when it's not being fed. The metric arrives on Friday with 1.2% error. The demo goes smoothly. The client jokes about how boring success feels. The rival posts a celebratory update without mentioning the freeze, a small theft of credit Raphael could spend the weekend prosecuting. He doesn't. He forwards the finance email to his own archive and writes 3 lines in his notebook. Avoided duel, set field, outcome landed. He sleeps that night like someone who buried a weapon in the ground. The following week delivers a harsher test. A production outage hits at 3 p.m. like a sudden storm. Pings multiply, threads fork. People reach for villains because villains are easier to find than root causes. The first messages are already shaping into lawsuits disguised as questions. This is where he used to get dragged, where rage passes for urgency and the post-mortem starts before the fix. He moves first. Creating 1 channel for triage, read-only updates elsewhere, he posts, then invites exactly 4 people, the only ones with levers that matter. He names a single decider and a single scribe. Goal: restore service in 30 minutes. No blame, no post-mortem in thread. Scribe: time-stamped updates every 5 minutes. Decider: kill switch if rollback at T plus 15 fails. He has learned that initiative is not noise, it is containment. When someone tries to drag the war back to the main channel with a dramatic "this is unacceptable," he replies with a template he built when calm. Acknowledged. Fix in motion in triage channel. Post-mortem tomorrow 10 a.m. Add your questions to doc, not here. He can feel the collective nervous system fall into a groove. People need a drum to march to. He gives them the drum. At T+12, the rollback hangs. Eyes turn to the decider. No one wants to be the hand that touches the breaker. Raphael's voice stays even. We're at the threshold we agreed. Execute kill switch. The engineer hesitates, then complies. The system drops and comes back like a body taking a hard breath. Uptime crawls upward. The scribe notes the times. The room exhales. Someone mutters, "We should have never shipped X." A fuse for a 3-hour fight. He puts a palm on the sentence. Save it for the post-mortem when our prefrontal cortex is back online. The joke lands because it's true. Neuroscience is not decoration. It's a tool that keeps people from tearing each other apart when scared. The next morning, he runs the post-mortem with the gentleness of someone who has broken his own favorite tool before. No blame, only design, he begins. What assumption failed, and how do we make it unbreakable? He maps the chain like a flight recorder, not a confession. He asks for 2 irreversible safeguards, not 10 aspirational promises. He assigns owners, dates, and a check-in that will actually happen. He chooses the distance again. The people in the room can make these changes without executive theatre. When the rival tries to slide in a disguised attack, he thanks him for the observation and parks it in a section titled Future Risk Explorations, which is corporate for not today. The meeting ends ahead of schedule. He closes his laptop with a small private smile and no need to be congratulated. The work moved. That is the win. The identity shift begins quietly and then all at once. Invitations change shape. People stop CCing him into public spectacle and start DMing earlier drafts. Gut check, they ask. He notices how different that feels in the body. Less armor, more oxygen. In a leadership sync, the director says, "Rooms are calmer when you're there." It lands like a diagnosis of health. He deflects the compliment not with false modesty, but with accuracy. "I'm just trying to keep us near the metric and away from theatre." He means it. He feels it. When ideas arrive half-formed, he resists the old performance of being the smartest person in the room. "I don't know," he says more often, and it doesn't taste like failure. It tastes like clean water. The team starts using his phrases. "What's the Friday metric?" becomes a reflex. "Is this of use?" appears in docs like a ward against vanity. An unexpected test of identity comes from the opposite direction, praise. After a month of fewer fires and faster decisions, his manager floats a title change with a list of visible wins he could broadcast. The old him would have turned the list into a thread, into a brand, into armor. He thanks her and offers a different artifact, a 1-page playbook titled Field Before Fight, 5 plain moves with 2 bullet examples each. He gives it to 3 peers who could use it, not because he is generous, but because he is building a world he wants to work in. He deletes the draft brag post. He lets 2 small credits slide to colleagues without correction. It's not martyrdom, it's strategy. He is training the system to reward the outcome, not the duel. By the end of the quarter, the team's delivery reliability chart looks less like a heart attack and more like a heartbeat. He pins that chart where only he can see it. Outside of work, the void teaches him interesting things about strength. At dinner, a relative begins the familiar debate that always cannibalizes holidays, politics served with dessert. He feels the hook and chooses no stance. Not avoidance, availability. "I don't have a good answer," he says, then shifts the distance to where their relationship lives. "But I'll call you next week to hear about the new project you're building." The conversation veers, and for once the evening ends without a family of amateur pundits litigating the nation. In the gym, he drops the weight on a lift when his shoulder whispers, "No." In another life, he would have argued with his body and lost twice. Today in pain, next month in injury. He writes in his notebook, "The void is not nothing, It is not being pinned by one way to be something. He becomes difficult to bait, not because he is hard, but because he is soft in the right places. A vendor attempts to escalate through theatrics in a call. He declines the stance offered. "This seems important," he says, "and I want to give it a real decision. Send me the 2 risks you most want, mitigated by tomorrow at noon, and I'll reply by 4. He sets terms that turn drama into deadlines. On the train, a stranger bumps him and glares for a fight. He doesn't shrink or puff up. He makes room with his shoulders, meets the eyes without challenge, and looks away. Not everything is a dojo. He practices humility as a tactic, not a virtue signaling exercise. The fastest way to be uncatchable is to be uninvested in being the closer or the visionary. He can be the listener. He can be the person who breaks a deadlock by asking the dullest, most useful question. He can be the ghost that declines the meeting and sends a 2-line doc that makes the meeting obsolete. He can be the one who makes tea while others sharpen their cleverness. The day he realizes he hasn't typed for the record in weeks, he laughs out loud. The urge to be a permanent record is a young man's game. He prefers to be a current. Mentorship sneaks up on him. A newer teammate, overwhelmed and bright with fight, asks, "How do you not get dragged into every argument?" He resists the seduction of giving a speech and instead gives drills. Before any meeting, write the metric in your notebook. In the meeting, breathe out longer than you breathe in, twice. Ask one question that forces a choice. Afterward, send one sentence that someone can't misunderstand. And find one fight you will not have this week and say it out loud to yourself. He watches the teammate practice, stumble, and catch it. The room needs more people swinging less. His days simplify. He makes no fight zones. After 8 p.m., no replies that smell like defense. If something stings, he writes it down and schedules a response for tomorrow morning. 9 out of 10 drafts never survive the night. He stacks thresholds with rituals. Every doorway a cue for empty stance, every calendar alert a check on distance, every urgent ping an invitation to set terms. He doesn't become perfect, he becomes predictable to himself. When he fails smaller and learns faster. He keeps his score, not applause, outcomes. On a quiet afternoon, he flips open 5 rings again and traces a finger along a sentence about seeing what eyes don't. He closes the book without finishing the page. He doesn't need more quotes. He needs fewer. He writes 5 lines on a card and tapes it inside his laptop where only he will ever read it. Control the tempo. Choose the distance. Offer the opening. Set the terms. Be no one in particular. A week later, he sits in a meeting where someone else is about to be ambushed. He feels the room gather into a familiar storm. He could leap in to rescue. He doesn't. Instead, he asks the smallest question that is also a key. What's the one Friday metric that would make this entire slide irrelevant? The weather changes. He doesn't look at the person he just spared. He doesn't need thanks. He just needs the work to move and the people to leave lighter than they arrived. Walking home, he passes the used bookstore where he first found the black-covered book. He doesn't go in. He doesn't need to collect anything from the past to feel strong. He knows the secret now, not as a concept, but as a habit in his hands and breath. If you set the field, most fights never happen. If you let go of being seen, you can see. If you stop clinging to one way of winning, you start winning before anyone notices. He turns the corner, lets a cyclist pass, and keeps moving with the kind of ease that makes the world mistake him for passive. He smiles at the mistake. Let them swing at shadows. He has already left the room. If this shifted something in you, stay with it. You don't need to win louder. You can win earlier. You don't need more arguments. You need better frames. And you don't need a new personality. You need a new tempo. If this helped, subscribe. It tells me to keep making work like this for you. Then drop a comment with 2 things. Where you'll stop fighting and start setting the field this week. Work, family, online, training, be specific. Which invisible move you'll practice first. Empty stance, choose the distance. Mai, Kyojitsu, false true opening, sen no sen, seize the initiative, or the void, be no one in particular. Make it your public declaration. Pin your Friday metric while you're at it. One outcome that makes the noise irrelevant. Walk lighter. Let others swing at shadows. You'll already be where the result happens. I appreciate you for being here. Subscribe, leave your declaration below, and I'll see you in the next one.